Good evening, and thank you for joining the inaugural From Paws to Claws Visionary 2020 series. We are in our fourth month and first time offering an evening edition. As we always state, we are grateful for our first time participants, as well as those who have joined us for the first time and have come back again. Your Office of Alumni Relations appreciates each of you. Furthermore, we will continue to bring remarkable alumni to talk about our relevant topics that will support our recent graduating class, as well as alumni who are seeking career change and those who just wish to lend support. As always, we wish to thank the alumni panelists who have shared their area of expertise. We did not seek you out, yet you came running with the spirit of a mighty panther, which we are, sharing your knowledge base when the call to participate went forth. Our newest series of From Paws to Claws continues to be dedicated to the Perfect Vision class of 2020 as they exercise their ability to be visionaries. Let me share a tad bit of history on the Office of Alumni Relations signature event titled From Paws to Claws. The Alumni Student Networking event was originally designed in 2008 when Kareem Taylor, class of 2010, in his sophomore year, expressed that students should learn from alumni. Over the years, we continuously call the alumni community to embrace our alumni in waiting, commonly known as students. We encircle them until they become a member of the only permanent constituency of our alma mater. As Cubs, they develop their discovery academically, socially, and spiritually, finding their way as their talents grow into claws and become fully entrenched felines of service locally, nationally, and globally, while remembering to provide financial support to the institution that placed them on their path as well-rounded citizens. There is more to the program, and feel free to visit the website to learn about this, From Paws to Claws. As we begin our exchange, I would like to express thanks to my colleague, Chastity B. Evans, class of 2010, who serves as the program manager in the Office of Alumni Relations. She will be your host, for she created this space for our interaction. Chastity, it is now time for you to begin our conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Alumna Galen E. Gateway Joshua, for the wonderful introduction and historical context. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining your Office of Alumni Relations for the Vision 2020 series, CAU is Black Excellence, Strengthening Governance at Our Institution. A special thank you to alumna Dr. Michelle Rhodes, who serves as the program specialist for the Office of Online Learning and Continuing Education, for being the technical commander behind all of our webinars. As we go ahead and get onto the webinar, we're going to discuss the purpose of today's webinar, which is to discuss higher education's new normal. Effective governance will be more important than ever because it affects all aspects of an institution's sustainability, including accreditation, tuition, and fee policies, curricular offerings and services, learning outcomes, facilities, and technology infrastructure, among others. This is a wake-up call for the HBCU governing boards. Hence, a new paradigm is required to ensure the selection of trustees who are committed to fulfilling their responsibilities differently than in the case currently. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. I will bring them up during our Q&A selection. Now, without further ado, introducing our first panelist for this evening. Alumnus Johnny Parham. Alumnus Parham is a retired executive director for the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Fund. Prior to retirement, Alumna Parham served as the vice president for the United Negro College Fund. In both positions, Parham worked with both public and private HBCUs. During his college years at Morehouse College and Atlanta University, now known as Clark Atlanta University, Alumnus Parham became heavily involved in the Atlanta student movement and with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, better known as SNCC. His involvement consisted of marches and sit-ins at local Atlanta restaurants. Alumnus Parham also served as a representative for the AU on the Committee on Appeal for Human Rights, known as CAU-HR. Alumnus Parham, thank you so much for being a part of this panel today and for always continuing to serve your alma mater. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
Awesome, awesome. So we're going to go into your first question for today. The observations and suggestions for what must be done to strengthen governance at HBCUs are based on nearly 100 years of collective service as faculty members, administrators, and consultants at an array of institutions of higher education, including HBCUs, PWIs, research and comprehensive universities, and community colleges. Do you think these observations are offered in the context to promote the success and vibrancy of HBCUs for future generations of historically disenfranchised students from all walks of life?
I absolutely do. And I really do think, though, that when we look at the history of these remarkable institutions that frankly made, in many respects, brick without straw, these are the entities that were largely responsible for having established a Black middle class in America. And there's no getting around that. These are so critical to where we are and where we are going. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of the innovations currently taking place on the campus of Clark Atlanta University in order to address the future needs of leaders of historically Black colleges. In the Department of Education, under the able leadership of Dean J. Fidel Turner and Dr. Barbara Hill, there is a process in formation to establish an executive leadership institute, which basically will seed, grow, and identify future leaders for historically Black colleges and universities. Very unique project. And the way this project came about is Dr. Louis Sullivan, the founding president of Morehouse School of Medicine, and I began to look at the current process by which presidents are essentially selected. There is a vacancy. The trustees will then enter into a contract with a search firm, and that firm will then go about the usual process. And in many respects, they'll sometimes identify someone who may have been an assistant provost of a traditionally white institution. Many times they will really recruit a president from an existing HBCU. But many times we end up with the same result. Give you an example just to sort of set a tone here. At the time of the founding of Clark Atlanta University, Dr. Thomas Cole, who was its president, served probably about 13 years. Walter Massey at Morehouse, 12 years. Basically, these people exceeded the current statistic, which is the average tenure of an HBCU president is 6 years, in comparison with the national average of 8.5 years. And what we lack here is a kind of continuity, but also we select people not necessarily on their understanding of what is required to really lead an historically Black institution. Our needs are extraordinarily more challenging just from the perspective of funding alone, let alone any number of other issues. So Dr. Sullivan and I really shopped around this concept. We put together a concept, and Dr. Ronald Johnson, then the president of Clark Atlanta University, liked the idea and suggested that Clark Atlanta University would be a wonderful venue because of your immense resources here. Interestingly enough, Dr. Johnson's successor, Dr. George French, who was president of Miles College, recognized the need again to really strengthen and begin to put in place a mechanism to make certain that future leadership of HBCUs is undergirded by an absolute and full awareness of the uniqueness of these institutions. And so you have now, in place, being formed a certified program for leaders, future leaders, for historically Black colleges and universities. So what we're doing in terms of governance, really, this is a very unique time. And for any of the alumni of CAU and other HBCUs who aspire to be presidents as well as trustees of HBCUs, there will soon be in place a cutting-edge certified program for future leaders of HBCUs. If you were referred by a physician to a specialist to address a particular medical need, you would want a board-certified specialist to address that need. Well, frankly, our schools are just as critically in need of certified leaders. We can no longer just rely on the searches being done by a search firm. So we've got to not continue to do the same things and expect different results.
Well,
I will take a pause, and if we wish to discuss this later, I really am willing to do that.
Well, did you, want to go into your statement, or would you like to do that towards the end?
I sure will.
All right, awesome. Well, as we get ready to move on, thank you so much, Alumnus Parham, for the wonderful information and insightfulness. If you all have any questions for Alumnus Parham, which I'm sure you all will, because he just spit out a lot of information that we all need to know about, please type them into the Q&A panel and your Zoom control panel right now. We'll be sure to get to them during our Q&A session. Introducing our next panelist for this afternoon is Alumna Judith Beville. An elected official in the town of Greenburgh, County of Westchester, State of New York, since January 2008, Alumna Beville is part of a team of local government officials, including the town supervisor, town council members, and the tax receiver. Over the past 10 years, Alumna Beville has increased to open government by making local government more accessible to the public. Over the course of her tenure, she has also coordinated Women's History Month, cultural history, and special events for the town. Over several occasions, Alumna Beville has partnered with leaders of local women's organizations to co-sponsor workshops that include issues related to the safety and welfare of women, such as human trafficking and human rights. Alumna Beville launched several initiatives to honor local residents and strongly embraces creating opportunities for high school and college students to learn about the world of work. For the past 12 years, she co-coordinated a summer internship program focused on communication, teamwork, leadership development, and problem solving through local government-related projects. Prior to embarking upon a career in local politics, Alumna Beville was a teacher as well and held several leadership positions in public sector administration. She is the founder and chair of the 400 Years Project, a county-wide collaborative focusing on the historical contributions of African Americans to this country. She also serves on the Advisory Council for the New York State Mentoring Program, the Executive Committee of the Westchester Municipal Officials Association, and currently is leading several voter education and participation initiatives. Alumna Beville is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and was accepted into the sorority in 1973 while matriculating at Clark College, now known as Clark Atlanta University. Alumna Beville, thank you so much for being a part of this panel and for always continuing to serve your alma mater. How are you doing today?
I am just fine, and I'm really honored to be a part of this panel created by Clark Atlanta University Alumni Association and joined by a dear friend here in New York, Johnny Parham, who I've known for many years, and this is just awesome. Thank you. and I see one of my former big sisters sending me little notes saying, "Hi, Judy, good to see you."
Well, that is so awesome, and I'm so happy that that one of your bigs is online today. So thank you for joining us.
Former big sister, lifelong Sarah.
Well, we got to go ahead and get on to your question for
Okay.
today. So, do you feel that failure to acknowledge and confront the governance deficiencies in higher education generally, and HBCUs in particularly, will undermine long-term institutional effectiveness, academic excellence, and sustainability?
In responding to this question, I'd like to kind of rephrase it sort of from a positive perspective by recommending that there be ongoing informal as well as formal assessment of the effectiveness of our of governance. Absolutely, failure to acknowledge and confront any deficiencies in governance in higher education, and in particular with historically Black colleges, will weaken and in weakening, yes, serve to undermine long-term institutional effectiveness, mainly because it's the health, wealth, and longevity of higher educational institutions dependent upon effective governance. And in addition to a strong president, CEO, CFO, and COO who are aligned with the institution's mission and vision and work cooperatively with the Board of Trustees. That kind of team will ensure that any deficiencies are addressed in a strategic and planful manner. So to have that kind of a team that looks out for any kind of deficiencies is critical to maintaining the health, wealth, and longevity of our institutions. Governance of any HBCU must also include a commitment to recognizing, incorporating, appreciating, and validating the African American history from which we all come from within this country, cultural traditions, and the principles and values that have sustained our longevity. These are also critical to being able to assess and confront the governance deficiencies in higher education, particularly, I'm speaking particularly with respect to our institutions, because I think that we meaning HBCUs, we have unique needs that while are very similar to PWIs, are unique to our cultural experience, unique to our purpose, unique to our definition, and unique to our future vision, which should be included within that vision, should be maintaining and sustaining not only strong African American leadership, but maintaining and sustaining our culture and our communities.
I agree. I agree all the way. I mean, as you start to see
higher education, our institutions of learning are considered in a community as well. I'm sorry, not to cut you off.
Oh, no, ma'am. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, we're starting to see that now around the AUC Center, and that is heavily needed in a lot of areas, particularly these areas that are not doing too well due to COVID. So wholeheartedly. Would you like to offer your statement now or towards the end, Alumna Beville?
I'll continue. I'll offer it now. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So first and foremost, our CAU Board of Trustees must have at the core of their existence and at the core of their belief system a consciousness that emanates from the history of African American ancestors, reflecting a commitment to supporting the success of every CAU student. All resources should be devoted to the strength, durability, long-term sustainability, ongoing management, and providing each student with a plan for upward mobility. The current economic and societal climates require greater challenges for governance of higher learning. Rising tuitions and saturated job markets are creating new and increased pressures for college and university leaders. In a survey conducted by the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges, AGB, approximately 68% of trustee representatives said that high tuition was one of their top 3 concerns. The other 2 were student debt and the ability of colleges and universities to respond to the changing needs of students and employers. Those responsible for governance must be trained in the complexities of programming, quality control, institutional regulations and legal requirements, fees and finances, and other related issues related to the effective operation, mission, and vision of the institution. Universities also benefit from trustees who can contribute substantively to research, planning, decision-making, strategic planning, assessment, evaluation, communications, financial stability, and those who know the competitive environment and other elements at the core of the university's goals, purpose, and mission. Recent articles on university governance recommend the need for greater alignment among the mission, goals, the strategies, and reward systems in order to achieve optimal effectiveness. This means alignment of the following elements: criteria for board membership and evaluation as well as for institutional goals and strategies, criteria for presidential selection and assessment in relation to the mission of the institution, rewards for promotion, tenure, sabbaticals, release time for scholarship, and goals for mission fulfillment, especially teaching and student learning, goals for enrollment and goals for retention, as well as graduation rates, goals for fundraising, and the priorities expressed in the institution's mission statement, as well as priorities for capital spending and scheduling of space. Ongoing informal assessments, as well as periodic formal assessments, are critical to remaining on an upward trajectory. 21st Century University trustees must include ongoing orientation discussions that cover the whole of the institution's mission, financial needs, fiduciary responsibilities, commitment to advancing the mission of CAU, as well as upholding the integrity of the board. And I just want to bring my statement to a close by saying that we have a powerhouse in our board of trustees. They bring just amazing resources, and going forward, I think that the challenge is going to be how they use those resources in order to sustain Clark Atlanta University and to continue to set this 151-year-old institution, distinguished institution of higher learning, into the future.
I agree.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Do you mind, if needed be, that can we share this statement if needed be?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
You dropped some really, key points that I really feel that, some people that may be listening in today or, may not be listening in today, it may be something that they will be able to utilize, in going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love CAU.
And we love you too. Well, thank you, Alumna Beville, for the essential tips and materials and for the wonderful closing statement. If you all have any questions for Alumna Beville, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel now. We'll be sure to get to those during our Q&A session. All right, we're moving along. Introducing our next panelist for this afternoon is Alumna Dr. Jamila Lee Johnson. Alumna Lee Johnson is currently an Inclusive Excellence postdoctoral lecturer at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Her research centers undergraduate Black women in higher education, specifically the student leadership roles and experiences of undergraduate Black women leaders at historically Black colleges and universities. As a critical scholar, Alumna Lee Johnson utilizes various critical theories and methods to disrupt the narratives around students of color. Her other research interests include mentoring practices that foster success for students of color in their transition into graduate programs, and conducting research in critical ways that humanize students of color as student participants. Alumna Dr. Lee Johnson holds a doctorate in in educational leadership and policy analysis from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a master's in student affairs administration from Michigan State, and is a 2008 graduate of Clark Atlanta University. Alumna Lee Johnson is also an author and is currently working on starting a nonprofit organization that assists students in going to college. How awesome. She is an avid supporter of HBCUs and would love to come back and work for her alma mater. So maybe we got some HR people on the line today for you girls to make that happen. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel today and for always continuing to serve your alma mater. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well today, Chastity. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this illustrious panel today. I'm excited to talk about what's happening in Clark Atlanta and ways that we are moving for and that they are moving forward.
And we are so happy to have you on this panel and to hear what you have to say. conducting throughout your research, and many more research panels and projects to go. So going into your question for this afternoon. The assertion that historically Black colleges and universities are at a crossroads is more than a euphemism. Rather, it is a reality with which we must all come to grips. More than any recent event in higher education, COVID-19 has disrupted the traditional mode of instruction. The need to rapidly shift to online course delivery has placed enormous challenges on all colleagues and universities, especially HBCUs. Do you feel CAU's online course delivery plan was solid throughout the execution versus other HBCUs and PWIs?
I would definitely say, definitely so. As someone who does research that is really centered around students' experiences at HBCUs, as well as a current faculty member, my first thought when we were all told that we had to go online is, what exactly is Clark-Atlanta doing? Because I was very interested to see what's happening. And so one of the things that I first noticed is that Clark-Atlanta University was one of the first institutions to even make sure that their students were able to have access online, where they were providing students in the spring with access to computers as well as laptops. And then for this fall, every student has been provided a Dell laptop. And a lot of institutions are not even doing that, just to even make sure that their students have access to be there. As well as every faculty member at Clark-Atlanta has gone through a rigorous online training program in order for them to effectively learn how to teach online. And then what I thought was very unique is that each class is going through like a peer-to-peer review process to ensure that CAU faculty will be able to conduct as well as educate and move our students forward. And as someone who is teaching currently at a predominantly white institution, we have gotten the opportunity to learn what resources that they have, but we haven't gone specifically through a program like that to learn how to learn how to teach online. A lot of the things that I'm doing and even incorporating are things that I'm like Googling and finding on Twitter. So I think that Clark-Atlanta is definitely moving the needle forward in terms of what we need to do to provide our students with the best education possible given our current circumstances.
Girl, I mean, you just said a mouthful, and I hope and pray that these students are really taking that in and understanding that, you know, because some of these universities will just leave you high and dry. And it's all about you when you get that, you know, degree, what you're going to do with it and how you can actually utilize it. So,
or telling you to come back to campus when it's not safe. So.
Exactly. My alma mater is doing that now, and they have like over 1,700 cases right now. And it's continuing to move. So would you also like to include your closing statement now, or would you like to do it later? It's totally up to you. You'll wait? Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alumna, Dr. Lee Johnson, for your best practices and for the awareness. We are truly praying for your health and hope that you stay well out there and that you teach those students some great things, which I know you're going to do, because that's just the spirit of you. If you all have any questions for Alumna Dr. Lee Johnson, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel now. We'll be sure to get to them during our Q&A session. All right, moving on to our last but never least panelist. Sorry, I'm like, what am I on today? Is Alumnus William Diggs. Alumnus Diggs is the president and CEO of the Broward Health Foundation. The foundation is the developmental arm of Broward Health, the Safety Net County Hospital System, which is headquartered in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This is one of the 10 largest hospital systems in the country. Broward Health is a $2 billion medical conglomerate of many county-based clinics and 4 large multidisciplinary hospitals. Alumnus Diggs manages. Thank you. I had a tongue twister there for a second. He manages a multi-million-dollar portfolio that he is responsible for growing to ensure that the hospital meets his financial obligations to its millions of Broward County citizens. In this role, he manages the expansive nonprofit initiatives that include capital giving campaigns and events and hospital employee recognition programs, naming rights for real property owned by the hospital, and all employee-focused grant programs. Alumnus Diggs is the founding president of the Beta Psi 1923 Foundation. This is the first of its kind Clark Atlanta-focused nonprofit. It is one goal that is to provide money to CAU for its students. In the 3 years since its inception, it has committed $100,000 to Clark Atlanta University. It has also become the model for other fraternities and sororities. They have a tacit agreement with CAU to do joint fundraising. Through this program, over 75% of its donors are new donors. Along with being an avid golfer and jazz enthusiast, Alumnus Diggs is a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated and is a proud graduate of Clark College, better known as Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia, where he obtained a BS degree in political science. Alumnus Diggs is originally from Augusta, Georgia, and is the son of Margaret and Joseph Diggs. He is married to his CC 1988 graduate sweetheart, Alumna Marie Diggs. The lovely couple have 2 children, Drew and Dominique. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel today and for always serving your alma mater, Alumnus Diggs. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. How are you today? Thank you for having me on the program.
I'm doing well, and it is our honor to have you on this program. Are we allowed to go into your question for this evening?
Sure.
All right. So as the president and CEO of Broward Health Foundation, do you believe this is a wake-up call for corporations and nonprofits governing boards? Hence, a new paradigm that will require leadership who are committed to fulfill fiduciary responsibilities differently than is cased currently?
Well, you know, all 3 of my panelists have kind of identified some of the same issues that I have as a concern. So I want to talk to you from the aspect of a person who's been the chair of many different nonprofit organizations on the education side, as well as on the foundation and giving side. Mr. Parham said it best, if you will. You know, when we have to take a look at how we compare to the competition that's in the marketplace right now, many of our children and our parents are sophisticated enough to be able to choose which school to go to, you know, where, you know, 40 and 50 years ago, that was not the case. And so we have to be prepared as an organization to compete at that level. In order for that to happen, the one thing that has not changed at HBCUs that must change if we're going to continue to sustain ourselves and grow is how we govern the organization itself. You know, like right now, I'm the chairman of KIPP schools in Miami. We're building 10 schools in 15 years, and we've got over $100 million budget to do so. Every one of my board members has a fiduciary responsibility to raise money for the institution. And to be quite honest with you, we say that just because you are volunteering does not mean you don't have a job to do. And we guide that job through a report card process, which basically means you either get the money, you give the money, or you get off the board. And you do so through a constitutional action, which basically says that if you don't raise the money, you can fire yourself by not being responsible for what you have to bring in. So as we take a look at Clark Atlanta University and the long-term impact of board members that are not raising money, it is fatal to the institution. We have to find a way to do that. We've got to find our way toward a better marketing, customer service delivery model that allows everyone that's on the board to be concerned with really just 2 things. That is policy in regards to making sure that the budget that the organization, through the provost and the CEO of the organization, who's the president, how they raise and manage the budget, and then make sure that as they bring their budget to bear, that the responsibility of each board member is to say how much money they're going to give or get and then live by that. So we've got a long-term challenge to make sure that our university, Clark specifically, is driven toward that end. We talk a lot about student debt, and at many, if you will, forward-thinking institutions, They're finding alternative ways to raise cash, the same way that we are at the hospital. My job not only consists of trying to find money by going out and asking people that have a lot of depth in regard to wealth to give, but we also are finding innovative ways to create commerce, which means that we're raising the money in a very different way through creating some of these commercial and retail opportunities and operations. Thus, if our board members are not being challenged to do that, then the board, in my mind, is really not set up correctly. There ought to be a direct alignment between that and the Alumni Association. And I say that because, you know, one of my major concerns is to make sure that we not only raise money, but that the money that we're going after from a long-term perspective is different than our competitors. Because like like Johnny Parham said earlier, many of us are going after the same dollars, and we've got to find a way to get better at doing that.
Understandable. Okay. Well, Alumnus Diggs, would you like to go ahead with your closing statement now, or would you like to do it towards the end as well?
Well, I think I like to wait because, needless to say, I want to, make sure that the conversation that we have is not just my opinion, but it's based on some of the different responses from our panelists.
Okay. Okay. So we are now at that time. So we can go ahead with Alumnus Parham. We can go ahead with your closing statement.
I am really honored to be a participant on this panel, primarily because I am absolutely excited about what is taking place on the campus of Clark Atlanta University. I did touch upon how the Executive Leadership Institute came into being. I'd just like to really just provide a few details in terms of how we went about doing that. Both Dr. Sullivan and I sought out a prospective funder to underwrite the planning phase of this concept. And with the support first of Dr. Johnson and now with the enthusiastic support of Dr. French, basically that funder was then brought in contact with Dean Turner and his team. And that resulted in a planning grant, which is in current operation. The projection is that the program will actually roll out in the fall of 2021. Basically, it will essentially address specific issues that are really specific to the HBCU environment, among them which include culture shaping, the mission, the role of the president, provost, dean, CFO, development officer, fund development, capital campaign fundamentals, fiscal management, staffing, interactions with trustees, training of boards of trustees, recruitment, development, and retention of faculty and staff, interactions with and recruitment of students, and maintenance of a positive academic environment, addressing student protest, campus safety, curriculum development, faculty and student research, intercollegiate sports activities, interaction with alumni, external and community relations, constituency development, and where we are currently, crisis management, which is brought about an awareness in a prolific way based upon the pandemic. So all of these basically, they can perhaps be applied to any higher education institution, but what's unique about focusing on HBCU leadership is the critical role that these institutions play, and those roles and responsibilities cannot be confused with the broader issues of institutional leadership. And so that's basically where the Executive Leadership Institute is currently positioned. And we're very fortunate there to have, as the project director, Dr. Phyllis Dawkins, who was former president of Bennett College. You may recall at the time of a very real crisis at Bennett, where they were challenged to raise $5 million just to retain accreditation. Well, it was Dr. Dawkins who actually raised $9 million. Well, she is working with this particular project. This is the kind of leadership that is putting in place and fashioning future leaders for HBCUs. And really, what Dr. French has basically inherited here is an extension of an initiative that he began at Miles, and now that he heads a major research university with its resources, he is really overseeing a cutting-edge program that will have long-term implications for the future of historically Black colleges and universities. So stay tuned, and we encourage all of you to plan on becoming fellows of the Executive Leadership Institute.
Awesome, awesome. We definitely look forward to it. Thank you so much, Alumnus Parham. Please give us more information about that when it's due. Next up, so Miss Alumna Judy Beville, you've already given yours, so thank you. You're on mute.
Statement, but I just want to add that going forward, I hope that the Board of Trustees, as well as the administrators, Department of Admissions, and all involved in the governance and administration of CAU will commit themselves to increasing the enrollment of African American men at Clark Atlanta University. I know that is a challenge throughout all of our HBCUs. However, it is critical to the future of our communities to increase the numbers of African American men who, with educational degrees and with the ability to be leaders as in the future. So I really hope that there is a concerted effort to recruit and retain young African American men in our institution of higher learning.
Thank you so much, Alumna Beville. Yeah, we are hoping for that initiative as well. So stay tuned to that as well, because I mean, I hope that, and I would like to say that our admissions department, they are really doing a great job at the recruiting. So, you know, in terms of recruiting more young men, more intelligent young men, you know, men that are not just playing sports, but are, you know, can hold it down for both, for academics and for, you know, sports intelligence. So really have to give them kudos for doing a great job this COVID, well, this semester, during this pandemic. So, because we are definitely still striving with numbers, and they are continuing to report out almost on a weekly basis. So, but thank you for that. Alumna, Dr. Jamila Lee Johnson.
Well, one of the first things I want to say is
can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. One of the first things that I do want to say is Alumna Parham, whenever that executive leadership program gets started, I would definitely love to be a part of that as one of the cohort members. But my statement is just simply, I'm honored to really be on this panel because it was really at Clark Atlanta where I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in higher education, and that Clark Atlanta is definitely moving forward, and us as alumni need to find ways to remain and get involved, as well as during a time like this in our country. HBCUs are crucial, and we are needed and will remain needed as long as the country is going through this time of unrest. So things that we can do and the way that Clark Atlanta is moving forward with their faculty, as well as providing various type of programming during COVID-19 is definitely needed.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your statement. Last but never least, Alumnus William Diggs.
And to unmute this, you know, I'm a big fan of Clark, and I came there in the 1980s. Matter of fact, and you mentioned on my bio earlier, you know, I am actually on my second marriage, and I met my wife who graduated in '88 about 10 years ago at homecoming. So the mother of my two children is Thomasina Turner Diggs, and she actually graduated from Clark in 1983. So, you know, I know that from my perspective, I love homecoming, you know, and that is where I found my pride at. And so for me, Clark is a beautiful place. You know, I think it's important though, as we, you know, move forward and we think about governance and how very important it is for us to understand that we all have if you will, a responsibility to be smart about what we ought to, you know, expect through our own inspection. You know, our Alumni Association has been around for quite some time, and it is so very, very important that we build up that organization as much as we possibly can. So when we founded the Beta Psi 1923 Foundation, you know, our biggest goal was to make sure that we got folk engaged and involved that had not given back to Clark in any significant manner. But it also showed the power of what we can do as alumni by coming together and doing that. And I'm so really proud of the aspect of how we've done that, because I ourselves have a board. And I will tell you that to a man on our board, we have given each other not only goals, but we've given each other strong responsibilities. Each one of our board members has to give $1,000 per year for 3 years. And everybody has met that obligation. And even now that we're now onto our 4th and 5th year as an organization, you know, those of us that are still on the board have said, we're gonna give another 3,000, right? And so we show our leadership through giving. And that's what governance is all about in today's business environment, because as much as, you know, Sister Beville talked about, you know, how important it is to keep our cultural competency up in that level. It's also important to make sure that we have to survive for the next 100 years, which means that we no longer we're not competing against the other HBCUs. We're competing against these Division I schools that are recruiting our kids to be athletes who, by the way, are going for 4 and 5 years and aren't getting degrees. But they market themselves to the extent that they can help these children achieve their dreams. Well, at the end of the day, we know, like Dr. Parham mentioned earlier, that we are, if you will, the creator of the Black middle class. So we've got to be smart about how we go out and recruit these young Black men to come to our university. And then we have to make sure that we mentor them through the process. None of that can happen, though, if we don't mentor ourselves. And what I mean by that is, it is absolutely our responsibility to make sure that every HBCU is fruitful, that the mandate that we're talking about is really shown throughout all of the HBCUs in the country. Because at the end of the day, when you take kids and you try to move them from one community to another, they have to be able to get a job. And that in itself gives them the ability to be able to give back to the university. But again, like I said before, governance goes past just peer counseling. It goes past just providing an opportunity to give money. It is a responsibility of the board members to make sure that if you're sitting there and you're occupying a seat, you need to be able to write a check. And if you can't write a check, then you need to be able to find the money. If you can't find the money, then you have to police yourself and make room for somebody to be on that board that ultimately can. And I think that's really, really important if we're going to get, you know, if we're going to get to the next level in regards to what we're doing as an organization.
Thank you, Alumnus Diggs. You do have a question from Brother Marcus Kendrick. He said, Brother Diggs, thank you for your wisdom and impact. Would you mind offering a potential vision of what a capital generating project for an HBCU in Atlanta, Georgia may potentially look like?
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. some time ago, and I'm saying this really from a developmental perspective, when Morris Brown, when we won the lawsuit to get back the property that was part of Morris Brown's campus, I picked up the telephone, and I called the school and I said, I've got a group of some NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball athletes that are interested in partnering with the school to develop something, with the idea that the money, of course, would come back to CAU. And we were adamant about the next steps. And by the way, this group of folk are some people that I've been dealing with for quite some time. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Clark was going through a transition, and we never got an opportunity to make that presentation. And we're talking about people who have strong balance sheets and a lot of money. I would think that it's not just about raising cash on an individual event, right? Because the events have played out. It's about creating commerce, about developing retail commercial opportunities and things of that nature that if you will, a lot of Black colleges are not really into. It gives you the opportunity to be able to do something smart that has a lifelong, growth process, right? We can get into commercial development. There's nothing wrong with Clark owning a commercial business, and being able to get money from that, or investing, if you will, dollars into next gen products that some of their alumni are into. That's what some of the other very forward-thinking not HBCUs, but PWIs are doing. They're engaged in things like that. And I think that we need to begin to look at those avenues. You've got to find a way to reduce the cost to operate the university if we're going to continue to be attractive from a cost per each student to go to school.
Great point. Awesome. Thank you so much, Alumnus Diggs. We do have one more question, and that is for Alumnus Johnny Parham. This is also from Alumnus Marcus Kendrick. He said, Mr. Parham, thank you for your unwavering commitment to the Atlanta University Center and our culture as a whole. Being that you were raised in the AUC, do you believe putting a focus on the elementary/middle school students in terms of recruitment and retention should be made a priority to retain students and families?
Absolutely. Frankly, to even add to that, I've kind of put together just a kind of a concept to suggest that schools within the AU Center actually adopt Booker T. Washington High School, which currently only enrolls 700 students. Basically, it's an historic school, but it could become a very solid kind of charter school that would become a feeder into schools of the AU Center. My mother attended AU High School, which was basically, that was in the absence of a public high school for African Americans at the time that she came along. She went to Atlanta University High School.
Oh.
And, the bottom line is I went to Spelman Nursery School. These schools are critical to the infrastructure, not just of Black communities, but for Black lives. So yes, I really do think that your question is absolutely on point, and very honestly, these are the challenges that we have. But I do think that there's something that we need to keep in mind. I have a feeling that there is emerging within the funding community to select certain schools that will become major beneficiaries of funds at the expense of others, without regard to the extraordinary role that's being played by all of these HBCUs. And that becomes an almost automatic result. When you look at what Mr. Diggs has pointed out, his structure of boards who are required to make financial contributions to the entities, that's critical, because what we're doing, unlike other groups, we have historically relied on other groups to support our institutions. For instance, when I was head of Thurgood Marshall, as well as when I was with the UNCF, very honestly, were it not for corporations, white money, neither of those organizations would exist. And very honestly, if you look at the funding of our institutions without white money, and that's been an historic fact, they would just go straight down the tube. But then the person who controls the purse strings also pretty much determines the future. So we've got to undergird these schools with Black support, alumni support, and to aggressively seek just the entity that Bill Diggs identified at the time of the attempted acquisition or development of a development program for the land on which Marsh Brown was located, essentially to pull together people who happen to have the resources. We've got to be extraordinarily really creative during this day and age, because the environment in which we're right now living is a totally new environment to all of us. And believe me, after this pandemic, we're all going to be living in a different kind of environment. And clearly the competition for the dollar will become even more intense than we have ever seen it before. That's my humble opinion.
Well, agree. Thank you so much, Alumnus Parham. Last but not least, question for today comes from Alumna Sandra Brooks. And this is up to Alumna Dr. Jamila Lee Johnson or Alumna Judith Beville, whoever would like to take it. This question states, while we have recruitment strategies for potential students, should there be a revised strategy for recruitment of trustees? Well, if no one wants to take it, anyone can take it. How about that?
I'll respond. I think that the recruitment of trustees should be one that reflects the resources that have been laid out in this discussion this evening, as well as resources that will help will ensure the sustainability of the university in the future. I think that it needs a lot of thought, a lot of thinking. As I said before, when I looked at and reviewed who our trustees are right now, we have a powerhouse of trustees. I would like to see more trustees on the board. I'd like, if we would expand it, I'd like to see more coming from Clark Atlanta University. I just really think that we have to have more trustees who come from the institution that we are speaking about and speaking to. However, sure. Bill, you had a comment on that?
Yeah, I don't want to be disrespectful, Ms. Beville. So if you're not done, please finish. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I basically feel very strongly about who the board represents. And I feel that the board should represent the students of Clark Atlanta University. Over the many years that Clark has existed, I'm sure that there's a plethora of professionals who embrace and who also represent the skills and resources that we are speaking to. I'd like to see our board increase to include more CAU grads.
Understandable. Well, did you want to add something really quickly, Alumnus Diggs?
Yeah, and I won't be long. Listen. Like I said before. I mean, I think that our guide is very simple. You know, this is a revenue-producing entity, and we need to look at it as the business that it has become, and no longer think about it as just an educational institution that is attempting to survive. In order for you to thrive, you know, you need to reach that common understanding of how much money do we need, and then what is the long-term strategy in regards to funding the school at the level so that it can remain affordable. In order for you to do that, you've got to have people on the board who have a strong enough business sense to be able to develop that. And if, by the way, if you want to have a board that is consistent with the United Methodist Church or whatever you think that governing body is going to be, then create an advisory board whose job it is to do nothing but raise money. Because I can tell you that on our board at KIPP Schools, you know, we have the CEO of Netflix and Michael Lomax and those, and I will tell you that the job is real simple for us. We're there to raise money. They've got people that, from a staff perspective, that understand how to run the institution. And by the way, if they don't, then the board gets rid of them. But at the same instance, the board has got to have the responsibility to make sure that if you're sitting there and you're not bringing in the dollars that this organization needs, you are as much responsible for its demise as much as you are its rise. And we can't play with that, because as you said earlier, within the, you know, Westchester, you've got X amount of dollars and you've got a job to do. And if that money's not there, then you tax the individuals within your community. And I know if you want to see a public outcry, talk about raising taxes, right? So I think that we need to take a look at our institution called Clark in the very same manner. And we can't be wrapped up in anything that does not say 5 years from now how much money we're going to need, and is the board, have they, those that are there, what is their report card? Have they performed? And if they haven't, then we've got to find a very gentle way to find someone else that will.
Thank you so much, Alumnus Diggs. Thank you all to our alumni panelists for the insightful gems that you all have released today to go forth with everyone on this call. We will go ahead and close out. Thank you all for the questions. Please stay in contact with our alumni and look out for our upcoming webinars, which will take place every other Thursday, rotating from noon to 1 or from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Immediately following this webinar, you all will receive a post survey. Please let us know what you think about it today. Your feedback is truly appreciated. Now keep in mind, this is our very first webinar that started at 6 p.m. today. So please look out for more of those and for more of the ones at noon. Great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you for being here. Special thank yous to my colleagues, Senior Director of Alumni Relations, Mrs. Galen E. Gatewood-Josho, and Dr. Rhodes for their stellar service, and to our wonderful panelists for a remarkable job today, and to our awesome attendees that participated, that stayed with us. We are truly grateful for your viewership. So thank you again. We look forward to seeing you all on September 17th at 6 p.m. Look it out for it in your announcements and on social media at Office of Alumni Relations, everybody. Have a great weekend.